The emergency beacon cut through the diplomatic chatter like a knife through silk. Ambassador Kethvara's crystalline features shifted from serene blue to alarmed amber as the distress signal translated across the conference room's holographic display. The Galactic Medical Council had been in session for 3 standard rotations, debating the finer points of interspecies treatment protocols when the call came in from the outer rim. "Quarantine breach on mining station Epsilon 7, announced Dr. Zeftal, his elongated form rising from the medical advisory panel. His species, the Velthari, were renowned throughout the galaxy for their surgical precision and theoretical expertise. Every major medical advancement in the last millennium bore their signature. Unknown pathogenic entity, local medical staff, compromised. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. In a galaxy where a single microorganism could wipe out entire species, quarantine breaches were treated with the same gravity as stellar collapse. "We need an expert," Kethvara stated, her diplomatic training keeping her voice steady. "Someone with experience in xenobiology and emergency containment." Dr. Zeftal's head tentacles writhed, a sign of deep consideration among his people. "I volunteer for the mission. My credentials in theoretical xenopathology are unmatched. I've studied every known pathogen classification and ran 10,000 simulations on quarantine procedures." "With respect, Doctor," came a voice from the back of the chamber, "might I suggest a different approach?" All heads and various other sensory appendages turned toward the speaker. Dr. Sarah Chen stood from the human delegation section, her simple blue medical uniform stark against the ornate robes and biosuits of her alien colleagues. At barely 5 feet tall, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, she looked unremarkable next to the towering, iridescent beings around her. "I'm a veterinarian," she continued, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being underestimated. "I've been one for 37 years back on Earth. Before I joined the Galactic Medical Corps, I spent my career dealing with scared, sick animals that could kill me with a swipe of their claws or a bite of their teeth." Dr. Zeftal's expression, as much as his species could express, showed polite skepticism. "Dr. Chen, while I appreciate your practical experience, this situation requires advanced theoretical knowledge and sterile precision. We're dealing with unknown alien pathogens, not domestic creatures." Sarah smiled, the same easy grin she'd worn when facing down a rabid bear 3 decades ago. "Doctor, with all due respect to your simulations, I've never met a sick animal that... Read the textbook. They don't follow protocols. They bite first and ask questions later." The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Kethvara looked between the 2 medical professionals, one representing the pinnacle of galactic medical achievement, the other a humble animal doctor from a backwater planet that had only joined the galactic community 15 years prior. "Perhaps," Kethvara said carefully, "both perspectives would be valuable." Dr. Zeftal's head tentacles stiffened. "Ambassador, I must protest. This is a delicate situation requiring—" "It's settled," Kethvara interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. "Dr. Zeftal will lead the medical response team, with Dr. Chen as consultant for practical field applications." Sarah chuckled softly. "Consultant, I like that." She turned to Dr. Zeftal, extending her hand in the human gesture of partnership. "Don't worry, Doc. I'll try not to get in the way of all that theoretical knowledge." The Velthari doctor stared at the offered hand, as if it might bite him, then reluctantly extended one of his manipulator appendages for a brief touch. "I suppose practical experience might prove supplementary." As the emergency response team prepared for departure, Sarah packed her field kit with the same methodical care she'd used for thousands of house calls. Antibiotics, bandages, surgical tools, and, most importantly, a bag of beef jerky and a thermos of coffee. In her experience, the best medicine was often just staying calm and well-fed. Outside the conference chamber's vast windows, stars wheeled, in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the drama unfolding among the species that crawled between them. Somewhere in that darkness, on a mining station beyond the outer rim, something waited, something that had already defeated the best medical minds the local systems could offer. But Sarah Chen had faced down angry bulls, sedated lions, and delivered breech-birth foals in the middle of thunderstorms. She'd learned long ago that the most dangerous situations often required not complex solutions, but simple courage and steady hands. The journey to Epsilon 7 would take 18 hours, plenty of time to prepare, and for Dr. Zeftal to run a few more thousand simulations. Sarah just hoped there'd still be someone left to save when they arrived. The mining station Epsilon 7 hung against the star field like a wounded animal, its lights flickering in distress patterns that made Sarah's stomach clench with familiar recognition. In her years as a country vet, she'd seen that same erratic energy in creatures fighting for their lives. Dr. Zeftal stood before the shuttles, main viewport, his biosuit sealed and his medical scanners running continuous diagnostics. The Velthari had spent the entire 18-hour journey reviewing protocols, studying theoretical pathogen behaviors, and refining his equipment to clinical perfection. Every tool was sterilized, every procedure memorized, every contingency planned for. Initial scans show massive biological contamination, he reported, his voice filtered through the suit's communication system. Readings are irregular. The pathogen seems to defy classification. Sarah finished sealing her own protective gear, a simple hazmat suit that had seen her through everything from anthrax scares to exotic bird flu outbreaks. She'd added her own modifications over the years, reinforced gloves for handling claws and teeth, extra padding at the joints, and a hands-free communication system that left her free to work. Sometimes the best classification is angry and scared, she said, checking her medical bag one final time. What's the status on survivors? 17 personnel remain in the sealed medical bay, reported Captain Thex, the Cronin pilot, whose 4 arms made him invaluable for emergency maneuvers. They've been trapped for 2 rotations. Whatever breached containment, it's between us and them. Through the docking port, Sarah could see the station's corridors stretching away into darkness. Emergency lighting cast everything in blood red. Shadows, and something, she couldn't tell what, had left claw marks along the metal walls. Dr. Zeftal activated his scanner array, the devices humming to life around him like a technological halo. I'm detecting movement. Large, organic. Bioelectric signature suggests high agitation. How large? Sarah asked, slinging her medical bag across her shoulder. Approximately 4 meters in length. Mass consistent with a mature Terran bovine. Sarah grinned. A cow-sized alien. Well, that's manageable. Dr. Chen, Zeftal said, his tone sharp with concern. This is not a domestic animal. This is an unknown xenobiological entity, potentially carrying pathogens that could... A sound echoed through the station's corridors. Part growl, part whimper, part something else entirely. It was the sound of pain and fear mixed with frustration, and Sarah had heard variations of it from thousands of different throats over the decades. It's hurt, she said simply, adjusting her gloves, and scared. That's why it's aggressive. How could you possibly know that? Zeftal demanded, his scanners flashing with alarm as the sound repeated. Same way I knew when Mrs. Henderson's bull had an infected hoof, or when the circus elephant was suffering from arthritis. Angry animals sound angry. Scared animals sound scared. This one sounds both. They moved through the station's corridors with careful precision. Dr. Zeftal led with his scanner array active, every sensor tuned to maximum sensitivity. He measured air quality, analyzed biological traces, and maintained a constant stream of data about theoretical contamination risks. Sarah followed, watching the scratches on the walls, noting the pattern of damage, reading the story they told. The creature had passed this way recently, moving erratically, leaving behind smears of what might have been blood or some other bodily fluid. But more telling were the subtle signs. The way the scratches tapered off as if the creature had grown, tired, the spots where it had clearly paused to rest. "Dr. Zeftal," she said quietly, "I don't think this thing is trying to hurt anyone." "The contamination readings suggest otherwise," he replied, his instruments painting holographic warnings in the air around them. "Your instruments are telling you it's carrying something biological, but look at the damage pattern. If it wanted to hunt, it would have gone straight for the medical bay where it could smell people. Instead, it's been wandering, leaving a trail like it's lost." They rounded a corner and froze. At the far end of the corridor, silhouetted against the emergency lighting, stood the creature. It was indeed cow-sized, but that's where any resemblance to Earth animals ended. Its hide was translucent, revealing internal organs that pulsed, with bioluminescent patterns. 6 legs ended in what looked like human hands, and its head was a disturbing blend of mammalian and something altogether alien. Dr. Zeftal's scanners went wild, alarms chiming in harmony as they detected massive biological contamination radiating from the creature. "Quarantine Protocol 7 Alpha, he whispered, reaching for his emergency sterilization equipment. "We need to contain it immediately." But Sarah was watching the creature's body language, the way it held its head low, the trembling in its legs, the way it kept looking back down the corridor as if searching for something. "Wait," she said softly, and began to slowly remove her gloves. "Dr. Chen, what are you doing?" Zeftal's voice cracked with horror. "The contamination—" "Sometimes," Sarah said, taking a slow step forward, "you have to trust what 30 years of experience tells you." The creature turned toward them, and Sarah saw its eyes, large, dark, and filled with the universal expression of a lost, frightened animal looking for help. Dr. Zeftal's biomonitors screamed warnings as Sarah Chen stepped forward with her bare hands exposed to potential contamination. Every protocol he'd memorized, every safety procedure drilled into him through decades of sterile academic training, demanded he stop her immediately. "Dr. Chen!" His voice cracked through the comm system. "You're violating basic quarantine procedures. The pathogenic risk is secondary to the immediate problem," Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who talked down charging stallions and cornered wildcats. "This creature isn't spreading disease. It's dying from one. The alien being, for lack of a better term, Sarah had mentally dubbed it Patches due to the mottled pattern of its translucent hide, lifted its head as she approached. Up close, she could see the rapid pulse of its internal organs, the labored breathing that made its whole body shudder, and most tellingly, the way it favored its rear left appendage. "Easy, girl," Sarah murmured, using the same tone she'd perfected with skittish horses. She wasn't even sure of the creature's gender, but something about its behavior felt maternal to her experienced eye. "Let's see what's wrong." Patches made a sound halfway between a whimper and a chittering noise, its head turning to look back down the corridor again. The universal behavior of a mother separated from her young. Dr. Zeftal remained frozen 20 meters away, his scanners painting the air with holographic warnings. "The biological contamination is massive," he reported to the rescue command. "Unknown pathogens, possible viral vectors, contamination spreading through." "Doctor," Sarah said without turning around, "have you ever actually touched a sick animal?" What? I'm a medical professional with advanced degrees in—" "That's not what I asked." Sarah had reached Patches now, close enough to see the creature's eyes dilate with fever. "Have you ever put your bare hands on something that was suffering?" And tried to help it? The question hung in the recycled air of the corridor. Through his biosuit, Dr. Zeftal could analyze, categorize, and theorize. But he'd never felt the rapid heartbeat of a frightened animal beneath his palms. Never. Had to read the language of pain and trust written in muscle tension and breathing patterns. I work with sophisticated equipment, he said defensively. Sterile techniques, advanced diagnostics, all very impressive, Sarah agreed, kneeling beside Patches. The creature's breathing had grown more labored, and she could see swollen lymph nodes beneath its translucent skin. But sometimes medicine isn't about what you know, it's about what you feel. She placed her hands on Patches' flank, feeling the rapid flutter of multiple hearts, the heat of fever, the way the creature's whole body relaxed slightly at the gentle contact. Through years of experience, her fingers read the story of illness, not the theoretical pathogen that Dr. Zeftal's scanners detected, but the practical reality of a mother separated from her children, stressed beyond her immune system's ability to cope. She's not the source of contamination, Sarah announced. She's a victim of it. That's impossible, Zeftal protested. The readings clearly show, your readings show she's carrying something biological. But look at her lymphatic system. See how swollen those nodes are. She's fighting an infection, not spreading one. Her immune system is in overdrive. Sarah ran her hands along Patch's body with practiced efficiency, checking for injuries, feeling for masses or abnormalities, reading the creature's responses to her touch. When she reached the favored rear appendage, Patches flinched away with a sharp cry. Found it, Sarah said. Zeftal, I need you to scan this area specifically. Look, for foreign objects, not biological contamination. Despite his fear, professional curiosity won out. Dr. Zeftal approached cautiously, his instruments focused on the limb Sarah indicated. After a moment, his scanners chimed with a different tone. There's metallic debris embedded in the tissue, and the surrounding area shows signs of rapid cellular reproduction consistent with her body trying to heal around a piece of mining equipment, Sarah finished. She was probably injured when whatever happened here first went wrong. Been wandering the station in pain and fever, looking for her offspring, while her body fights off secondary infections from the contaminated metal. The pieces clicked together in Dr. Zeftal's analytical mind. The biological readings, they're not pathogenic contamination, they're maternal pheromones and stress hormones. Exactly. Sarah began opening her medical kit, pulling out tools that looked primitive compared to the Velthari's sophisticated equipment. She's been calling for her babies. That's what your scanners have been detecting. As if summoned by their conversation, a chorus of chittering sounds echoed from deeper in the station. Patches lifted her head, responding with the same noise, and the relief in her posture was unmistakable. The survivors, Dr. Zeftal realized. They're not trapped by a hostile creature. They're playing babysitter to a litter of frightened alien youngsters, Sarah confirmed, already preparing a local anesthetic, while Mom here has been going crazy trying to get to them. She looked up at the Velthari doctor, his sophisticated biosuit and gleaming instruments suddenly seeming less impressive than the simple fact that she'd read the situation correctly through nothing more than observation and experience. Now, Doc, she said with a grin, want to help me perform some very non-theoretical surgery? Because if we can remove that debris and reunite this family, I think our quarantine crisis might just solve itself. The makeshift operating theater in Corridor 7 would have horrified any medical school instructor in the galaxy. Dr. Zeftal knelt on the metal decking, his pristine biosuit now scuffed from helping position Patches for surgery, while Sarah worked with tools that looked ancient compared to his laser scalpels and nanosurgical devices. Your technique is unconventional, Zeftal observed, watching Sarah irrigate the wound with what appeared to be simple saline solution. The galactic medical standards clearly state that xenosurgical procedures require sterile fields, atmospheric control, and sometimes, Sarah interrupted, carefully extracting another fragment of twisted metal from Patch's leg. You work with what you have. She glanced up at him. How are her vitals? Zeftal consulted his monitors. Despite his initial horror at the non-sterile conditions, his scientific training compelled him to track the patient's condition. Heart rates. There are 4 separate cardiac rhythms. Are stabilizing. Core temperature decreasing. Stress. Hormones. Actually, they're dropping significantly. The sound of Sarah's voice had a calming effect, not just on Patches, but on the creatures beyond the sealed medical bay doors. The chittering had settled into softer, more rhythmic sounds. What any Earth animal behaviorist would recognize as comfort calls between mother and offspring. That's because she knows help is coming, Sarah said, probing deeper into the wound. Animals understand intent better than we give them credit for. She can tell the difference between someone trying to help and someone trying to harm. But how? Zeftal leaned closer, genuinely curious now. Your species lacks telepathic abilities. You have no pheromone detection organs. How can you possibly communicate with an entirely alien life form? Sarah paused in her work, looking down at Patch's alien features. The 6 eyes that tracked her movements, the hand-like appendages that occasionally brushed against her arm, in what could only be described as affectionate gratitude. Pain sounds. The same in every language, she said simply. So does relief. And mothers. Mothers are mothers, whether they have fur, scales, or translucent skin that shows their hearts beating. She returned to the delicate work of debris removal, her fingers navigating around alien anatomy with the confidence born of experience. Each fragment of contaminated metal she extracted brought visible relief to their patient, muscles relaxing, breathing becoming less labored. Dr. Zeftal found himself leaning closer, fascinated despite his training. The healing rate is remarkable. Her cellular regeneration is accelerating as you work. Stress suppresses immune function in most species, Sarah explained, lifting out a particularly large piece of twisted metal. Remove the pain, reduce the stress, and the body starts healing itself. Basic veterinary principle. Basic. But I spent 6 years studying theoretical xenobiology, and no simulation ever taught me to read emotional states in unknown species. Sarah glanced at him, noting the wonder in his synthesized voice. Maybe that's because you can't simulate 30 years of getting bitten, scratched, kicked, and occasionally hugged by creatures that can't tell you what's wrong in words. The chittering from the medical bay grew more insistent, and Patches responded, with what could only be described as maternal cooing. Even through the sealed doors, the family connection was unmistakable. I need to see them, Sarah said, beginning to close the wound with dissolvable sutures. If the babies are healthy, we can reunite them. If not, she let the implication hang. The survivors reported that the young creatures appeared unharmed, Zeftal said, accessing his mission briefings. They've been contained in the medical bay for safety. Contained or trapped? Sarah asked pointedly. The distinction made. Zeftal paused. I had not considered the difference. 20 minutes later, they stood before the medical bay doors. Sarah had refused Zeftal's offer of a mobile scanner to assess the situation inside, instead pressing her ear to the sealed entrance. 3 juveniles, she announced after listening for several minutes. Different vocal ranges, probably different developmental stages, and at least 6 scared humans trying to keep quiet. How can you possibly determine that from auditory input alone? Zeftal demanded. Sarah straightened, checking her medical bag one final time. Because scared animals sound different when they're trying not to attract attention, and scared humans sound exactly the same. She activated the door release, and the portal hissed open to reveal a scene that made both doctors pause. 3 creatures, each about the size of a large dog, but clearly juvenile versions of Patches huddled in the center of the medical bay. Around them, arranged in a protective circle, sat 6 human miners and medics, all looking exhausted but determined. "They're not dangerous," called out Dr. Martinez, the station's chief medical officer, as soon as she saw the hazmat suits. "They're just scared. We've been trying to keep them calm, but they keep calling for their mother," Sarah finished, stepping into the bay, "who is now recovering from surgery and very eager to see her children." The juvenile creature's response was immediate. They chittered excitedly, pressing against the sealed door that separated them from the corridor where Patches waited. The humans looked relieved beyond words. "Surgery?" Dr. Martinez stood up slowly, her own medical training taking precedence. "Overexhaustion. What was wrong with the adult? Infected wound from mining debris," Sarah explained, kneeling beside the juveniles. They approached her with the fearless curiosity of young animals, their translucent skin showing rapid heartbeats but no signs of distress. "She's been wandering the station looking for her babies while fighting off secondary infections." Dr. Zeftal remained in the doorway, his scanners active, but his alarm systems quiet for the first time since they'd boarded the station. The biological contamination, it was never contamination at all. Just a family separated by accident and a mother willing to fight through pain and fever to find her children, Sarah agreed. She looked up at the exhausted station crew. "How long have you been babysitting?" 2 days, Dr. Martinez laughed, the sound carrying relief and exhaustion in equal measure. "Best patients I've ever had, actually. They're incredibly intelligent. One of them figured out how to operate the food dispenser. On cue, the smallest of the juveniles made a series of chittering sounds and pressed what appeared to be a hand against the medical bay's control panel. The panel lit up in response, displaying what looked like nutritional readouts. "Remarkable," Dr. Zeftal breathed. "They've learned to interface with our technology." "Intelligence plus desperation," Sarah said, standing and brushing off her knees. "Universal combination for problem solving." She turned to Dr. Martinez. "Ready for a family reunion?" The reunion took place in the station's main cargo bay, the only space large enough to accommodate both the medical equipment and the emotional needs of a separated family. Dr. Zeftal had insisted on maintaining monitoring equipment, though his earlier panic had been replaced by scientific fascination. Sarah sat cross-legged on the metal decking, watching as Patches nuzzled each of her offspring in turn, her translucent skin literally glowing with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed. In rhythm with her contentment, the wound in her leg was healing rapidly, already showing the accelerated cellular regeneration that came with reduced stress. "The biochemical changes are remarkable," Dr. Zeftal murmured, studying his readouts. "Cortisol analogues dropping, oxytocin-like compounds increasing, immune function improving in real time. Happiness is good medicine," Sarah said, accepting a cup of coffee from Dr. Martinez. The station's medical officer looked like she'd aged a decade in 2 days, but her relief was palpable. "I have to ask," Dr. Martinez said, settling beside them. "How did you know? All our protocols said to maintain distance, establish containment, wait for specialists. I spent 3 decades learning that animals don't read protocols," Sarah replied, watching the juveniles climb over their mother with the fearless affection of young creatures everywhere. "They react to fear with fear, to aggression with aggression, but they also respond to genuine care with trust." One of the juveniles, the smallest, who had figured out the food dispenser, approached Sarah with cautious curiosity. Its 6 eyes fixed on her face with unmistakable intelligence, and it made a series of soft, chittering sounds. "I think she's trying to thank you," Dr. Martinez observed. "Or asking for more of those protein bars you've been giving them," Sarah chuckled, reaching slowly toward the creature. "Either way, the intent is clear. The juvenile allowed Sarah to stroke its head, its skin shifting to warmer, more golden hues under her touch. Dr. Zeftal's scanners registered the change immediately. Chromatic. Response to positive stimulus, he noted. They're capable of emotional communication through bioluminescence. Most animals are capable of emotional communication, Sarah said. We just don't always know how to listen. Over the following hours, as the station crew worked to repair the mining equipment that had caused the initial accident, Sarah found herself conducting an impromptu lesson in interspecies relations. Dr. Zeftal, freed from his initial terror, proved to be an eager student. The key, Sarah explained, as they watched Patches teach her offspring to manipulate various pieces of station equipment, is to remember that intelligence and emotion aren't mutually exclusive. Just because something can't speak your language doesn't mean it can't think or feel. But how do you bridge the communication gap? Dr. Zeftal asked. Without shared language or cultural reference points, you start with what's universal, Sarah said. Pain, comfort, fear, safety, love. Every parent in the galaxy understands what it means to protect their children. Every child understands what it means to be lost and scared. The family had clearly made themselves at home in the cargo bay. Patches had discovered that the environmental controls could be adjusted to create warmer microclimates, while her offspring had learned to activate the station's entertainment systems. The sight of juvenile aliens watching human cartoons while their mother dozed nearby had a surreal normalcy to it. They're not so different from us, Dr. Martinez observed, recording everything for her medical logs. Curious, social, protective of family. Maybe that's the real lesson here, Sarah said, finishing her coffee. We spend so much time focusing on differences that we forget to look for similarities. Dr. Zeftal had grown quiet, his instruments forgotten, as he simply observed the alien family's interactions. Finally, he spoke. I have 17 advanced degrees, he said slowly. I've published hundreds of papers on theoretical xenobiology. I can recite the molecular structure of every known pathogen in the galaxy. He paused, watching as the smallest juvenile fell asleep against its mother's flank. But I've never learned what you seem to know instinctively, which is that sometimes the most advanced medicine is simply caring. Sarah smiled, the same gentle expression she'd worn while calming countless frightened animals over the decades. That's not advanced medicine, Doc. That's basic kindness. And the beautiful thing about kindness is that it works the same way on every planet, with every species. As the Epsilon 7 crisis officially concluded, and the various medical teams prepared their reports, Sarah found herself making one final entry in her personal log: medical intervention successful. Patient recovered fully. No advanced procedures required. Treatment protocol, removed source of pain, reunited family, provided basic care and comfort. Prognosis, excellent. Side effects, improved interspecies relations, enhanced understanding between medical professionals, and reminder that sometimes the best technology is a gentle touch and an open heart. Dr. Zeftal requested to be transferred to Sarah's team for future emergency responses. His official reasoning cited the value of practical field experience in xenobiological medicine. His personal log was more honest. Today, I learned that there's a difference between knowing about life and understanding it. Dr. Chen has spent 37 years understanding life, one creature at a time. Perhaps it's time I learned to do the same. The alien family eventually departed Epsilon 7 on a transport ship designed for their physiology, but not before the juveniles had figured out how to program the station's computers to display farewell messages in 17 different languages. Their final gift to the station crew was a bioluminescent light show that painted the cargo bay in colors that had no names in any human language, but somehow conveyed gratitude better than any words could have. Sarah watched them go with the satisfaction of a job well done, then turned to Dr. Zeftal. "Ready for the next emergency call, Doc?" "With you as my partner," the Veltari replied, "I believe I'm ready for anything."